device, run certain commands, log the output into a text file, and then take that information and put it into a database. Anytime a cross-connect is changed, send the information to syslog or an email. And I would also recommend to delete or disable any default accounts. Here are also some TL1 commands for adding, editing, and deleting user access and command privileges. The TL1 Guru URL below has more detailed information if you want to know more. Here's some tools that you can use to modify settings remotely. Stephen Hessing has a CPAN TL1 module, and the Sarah TL1 toolkit is pretty much the best one out there. Stephen's is pretty much, he hasn't updated in quite a few years. So to explain Stephen Hessing wrote a Perl extension that is available via CPAN that provides a framework to develop specific commands for TL1 devices. The Sarah toolkit, which is at version 1.3.1, allows the retrieval of TL1 device information without having to know the exact details of how the TL1 command actually works. This toolkit currently works on Nortel, Cisco, and ADVA devices, but can also be used to execute TL1 commands pretty much on any TL1 device. Does anyone have any other questions? Sure. I'll get to you in a second, sir.
I guess the one slide that you had, can you go back to the one with the multiplexers?
Sure. This one?
Yeah, that one. Is it like options where like you'll have like those two, and then you'll have like a DAC system, like a digital access cross connect in between?
Say that again?
Like a digital access cross connect system?
I think it all depends on how the network is set up.
Right, but like you can have other devices in there. Are the main DACs still supported like the Alcatel 1631 SX DACs or 1100?
I believe so.
Like, are people replacing all that infrastructure with like you were saying, like ONS 5454 or like maybe like 1560, 1560? Like, is a lot of that going away, or is there still a lot of?
There is a lot of old stuff still out there that people are using because, you know, kind of the if it ain't broke, don't fix it model.
Right.
So, I mean, there's still COBOL stuff out there that runs. They pretty much use the same thing with transmission gear. Do the same thing, I should say.
What about, like, I know that with those particular two devices, they have like a top stocks, TOPS. Like, that has like a lot of like syntax for TL1 that might be different than some of the Cisco stuff. At least I've read into that a few times with those two particular devices.
Well, there's definitely the standard TL1 that the RBox, the standard version, and then like Cisco, Tel Labs, Alcatel have their own like added commands to their boxes.
Right.
So that does happen.
And then I think it's next slide. Can you it's the one on network management.
Do you remember what page?
I think it's the next one. Nope.
No. No. Which one, dude?
Yeah, that was one.
This one?
Yeah, no, back one more.
One more? Okay.
You were talking about like, this is it. But you were talking about network management systems and like how they support it, and how TL1 is like a difficult language to use, like user-friendly one or something like that. Not a user-friendly language. Like, are people still using the anime and Turk systems to control them, or like Turks was the provisioning system that was written by Dogform to control, like it basically spoke TL1, and it kind of like hid all that functionality underneath. And then NMA was the telemetry and like network management like architecture for it. Like, is that stuff still around too? Because like, or are they being replaced with other tools?
I don't know.
Yeah.
You.
Yes, it is.
Well, there you go.
Tom 40 now is developing that software and developing importing it to the next generation.
Which one?
According to Wikipedia, it says that 18 Verizon Plus and Cincinnati Bell still use Turk
Well, we could,
Even brand new stuff has it in it. I just had the great misfortune of spending a week in Plano at Alcatel-Lucent dealing with OLT equipment. So this is like the head-end stuff for BIOS, familiar with BIOS. It speaks TL1.
you, sir?
With TL1, is this more of an application, so it's still going to run across my IP network, or out of band, or on that out of band network, this is a serial protocol? So if it's, do I actually have to enable it, or how serious a threat is it? If it's, if it's running on my management network, do I actually have to disable it, or do I have to enable it? Or is it its own real protocol running across its own dedicated trunks?
I don't think I understood the question. Could you rephrase?
Sure. So if it's running on an out of band network, so it's not running in band, as the earlier question was. So I can't send TL1 commands. I guess the question would be, do I send TL commands over an IP network, an out of band IP network, or do I send TL commands across dedicated serial connections to the devices?
A lot of the TL1 doesn't. When I was working at the Memphis ISP, we would log in. One of them had an IP address, and we would log into that one, and then we would do all the TL1 commands. There's an out-of-band channel that you can say, hey, this machine from here needs to have a cross-connect from here to here. So it literally, through the out-of-band, goes from here to here, and then then the command does the cross-connect from the two machines. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody? Sir?
I had some hopefully simple questions for you. When you started, did you say you wrote a TL1 to SNMP like converter or program?
We were in the process of doing it when I left the ISP. I do have some examples. If you want some code, I do have some examples of how to do that. We can talk about it afterwards.
Yeah, the Telcordia has one. You gotta buy it. It's gonna cost you a bunch of money.
This one's free.
Okay.
I've got some Perl that you can, at least an example of how you can do it.
Okay. Could you describe the process of connecting to one of these devices? I mean, I'm not in an ISP. I'm an end user site. So where am I going to find one of these devices? And I'm assuming I'm going to need a serial connection to connect to it.
Well, some of the really older devices, it would be an RS-232. So you'd literally take your laptop or computer and plug in and then, type in the commands. Some of them, like I was saying, you can telnet to one of the devices. It has enough knowledge to that you can telnet to it or what have you, and then you type in the commands for all the other machines, and it goes through the out of band. Does that answer your question?
A little bit. Is this device going to be, in my phone closet?
No. No, it would probably be at the Bell. It's the Bell site itself. Like we had to go to, when I was working at the Memphis ISP, we had to go to level 3 site. We had to go to, sometimes customer sites had them, depending on what kind of bandwidth they wanted out of us. But they'd be mostly located at the Bell itself, the Bell CO.
Okay. And could you just expand just a little bit more on the malicious activities? I mean, most of the ones you described they're very loud. You're going to shut something off or redirect something. Could you just talk a little bit more about the potential for maybe not so obvious damage?
Those were, I can't think of any offhand. We could talk about it. Sure, RS, what's up?
Well, I can. Most of this stuff has monitoring capabilities, so that you can watch a data stream. Usually what you're doing is you're hooking a bit error rate counter or something like that onto it, right next to it, for instance, to watch for errors, state transitions, stuff like that. But it's, I would say, probably 2/3 of this equipment. Anything that's relatively new, where relatively new means old enough to vote.
Excuse me.
It's also capable of replicating